Good evening, managers and partners. Today we'll present our audit plan for Sheridan AV Limited, starting with an overall assessment of the control environment and the key risks. Based on the company's organizational structure, interviews, and meeting minutes, we've evaluated the 6 core control environment elements to distinguish inherent risk and control risk. We will also address ethical principles and threats to independence relevant to this audit, which will guide our detailed cycle analysis later. We've evaluated all 6 control environment elements, clearly distinguishing IR and CR, aggressive management style and ethical conflicts, like bonus, linked sales targets, and family relationships, drive high inherent risk, while critical flaws such as no segregation of duty and informal process lead to very high control risk. These family ties and performance incentives also create self-interest and familiarity threats to our audit independence, requiring robust safeguards. Overall, we conclude IR and CR are both high, meaning we must set a low detection risk. Now let's move to the detailed analysis of the payroll cycle.
Hello. I'll briefly present the key risk identified in payroll process at Sheridan AV. Based on our review, we identify one key risk: recurrent or unauthorized payroll payments, supported by several control weaknesses in the system. First, we find high control risk in payroll processing. For example, handwritten timesheets increase calculation errors. The lack of a formal HR department creates a ghost employee risks. Missing payroll change tracking allows unauthorized amendments, and no due authorization for bank transfers raises the risk of fraudulent payments. These weaknesses mean the system cannot effectively prevent or detect error. As a result, key assertions are affected: accuracy, completeness, and presentation and disclosure. Recorded the payroll may not relate to real employees, amounts may be miscalculated, or transactions may be incomplete. To address this, we will perform extensive substantive procedures, recalculating payroll amounts, testing employee existence, reviewing reconciliations, and conducting analytical procedures. In conclusion, due to these control weaknesses, we will maintain detection risk at a low level and perform extensive substantive testing to obtain sufficient audit evidence over payroll. Now let me teammate explain the sales cycle.
I will briefly present the key risks identified in the sales process at Sheridan AV. Sales are the main source of revenue. Based on our review, we identified 2 key risks: cash misappropriation and uncollectible receivables. Supported by our preliminary analytical review, suggest potential weaknesses in cash control and potential issues with receivables recoverability. First, regarding cash sales, we identified control weaknesses that increase the risk of cash misappropriation. This indicates a high control risk in the cash receipts process. For example, cash may remain in the safe for several days before being banked. Multiple employees know the safe access code, and there is limited segregation of duties. These weaknesses create opportunities for misappropriation. As a result, completeness and existence assertions may be affected. Cash receipts may not be fully recorded, and recorded cash may not physically exist. To address this, we will perform substantive procedures including reviewing bank reconciliations, performing cash counts, and tracing cash receipts to bank deposits. Second, we identified a risk of uncollectible receivables from credit sales. There is an inherent risk due to the nature of credit transactions, combined with a control risk as the credit approval process relies on managerial judgment and lacks formal criteria, increasing the risk that receivables are overstated. This affects the valuation assertion. To address this, we will review aged receivables and check subsequent cash receipts to assess recoverability. In conclusion, due to these control weaknesses, we will maintain detection risk at a low level and perform extensive substantive testing to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence over cash and receivables. Now, let my teammates explain the risk related to prepayment and more detailed receivables.
Okay, I will show our audit finding for the Sheridan AV. It include about covering receivables, prepayments, risk analysis, and our ethic rules. Firstly, let's look at the receivables. We separate inherent risk and cultural risk clearly. IR comes from the business. The company sells mostly on credit to the wholesale consumers, so late payments are common. 11.9% of the receivable are over 90 days late, and CR is high because the culture are weak. No regular consumer checks, and no system to chase payments, and no separation of the financial duties. This caused £134,800 of the consumer payments and not be recorded. And from the simple data analysis, the company collect the cash much slower than similar businesses, and these problems hurt the small profit margin. Because the risks are high and we want the detection risk to be low, but the current checks are not enough, so DR is still elevated. We will do more detailed testing to lower it. And the next is prepayment, such as prepaid rates and insurance. IRA is low to the medium, and this are the short-term assets. But the CR is moderate because the record may be wrong, and when allocating cost to the right period, and then we use the calculation to check if the prepayment recording correctly, and we will carry out the detailed testing to the reduced detection risk. In final, to fix these problems, we suggest they do the monthly consumer checks and payment chasing system, and separating financial jobs and recording payment quickly. Okay, now let my teammates show you the inventory cycle.
Okay, now let's talk about the inventory cycles. It's also an important cycle since it links purchase, storage, and sales. So any weakness here will directly impact our financial statements. So let's say what's going on with this company. For our analysis, the main risk is misstated inventory values and unrecorded loss caused by high inherent risk and control risk. First, inherent risk is high. The company has expanded its wholesale business, increased inventory, complex risk. Water damage speakers may lead to valuation errors, and physical stock is risk due to the lack of checking. Second, its control risk is also high. Inventory counting and the recordings are finished by junior staff Zoe without independent review, and the new warehouse has no security system, and there is no formal impairment review for damaged stocks. Third, our analysis review found the difference between cycle counts and final recordings. Unrecorded water damage stock and security gaps all lead to mistake inventories. Therefore, as inherent and control risk are high, we must keep detection risk lower. We cannot rely on controls and need more details and information from auditor testing. So that part will include extensive, complex valuation and risk obligation. Our auditing process can do these things to fix these problems. It includes the year-ending inventory counting, checking damaged stock for impairment, and reviewing recordings, checking the security systems. Thank you.
To conclude, Sheridan AV's high IR and CR mean we cannot rely on its internal controls, so we will perform extensive, substantive testing on payroll, sales, and inventory cycles. We have also identified key ethical and independence threats, which we will mitigate through independent reviews and conflict of the interest safeguards. This approach ensures we meet audit standards and supports the company's future listing goals. Thank you.